Good afternoon. My name's Elizabeth Cohen, and welcome to this wonderful event. I've been looking forward to it for the whole festival. I am so honored to be here with Bonnie Tsoi, who is the author of this wonderful book. I heard some applause. We can do this. Yes.
Thank you.
I just loved having the chance to read on muscle, and I'm so glad that all of you have joined us here to talk about the book. So, for those of you who have read it, you will understand the first question I'm about to ask, which is, Bonnie, make me a muscle. Now, I started our conversation with that because you start your book with that.
Yes.
So tell me why you start your book with "Make me a muscle."
So it's a phrase that we all understand on two levels, right? First, the actual physical act of making the muscle, like contracting those fibers in a way that demonstrates publicly our health and fitness, right? But it also is a stand-in for all strength. I mean, the emoji is like, this is like, if you type strength into your phone, like that's what comes up, right? And so it's a symbol, it's a metaphor has visual meaning. So muscle is both itself and bigger than itself. And that's what this book is about.
And your father used to say, tell me about that.
He used to say, he would just kind of pass through the room, and he would just kind of like tap us on the shoulder and say, make me a muscle, and we would just kind of be like doing our homework and be like, okay. And the backstory to that is my father, when I was growing up, was a professional artist and a martial artist, and he still is. He just turned 79. If I showed you a photo of him, come up to me afterwards if you want to see. He looks like my brother. It's kind of scary. But so that just meant that for my brother and me, growing up in his downstairs studio was both to be schooled in the aesthetics of the body, in art, and also understanding that what made a body beautiful was strength and physicality. And so the art studio was also like the gym. So we had like a bench, a weight bench, and like barbells, and a speed bag, and a heavy bag, and jump ropes. And, after dinner, like at 10 o'clock at night, he would make us run with him the mile to our pediatrician's office, which had like a really big parking lot. And so we would get there, and then he would keep doing laps and like shadow box, and my brother and I would just be like this in the corner, and then he'd make us run home. And it was just, I know this is not a normal thing. I kind of came to understand that other families didn't do this, but this is like the environment I grew up in. And so I understood both the value of, just the value of physical life is important.
And you say muscles are smarter than we think. What do you mean by that?
So that is my big idea, because in the hierarchy of our body systems, right, we don't think about muscles. It's always like brain first. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that our muscles are doing so much more than we understand them to be doing. It's not just like the physical work of like moving our bones around. Muscle is an endocrine tissue. Muscle also has memory of its own. So when we think about muscle memory, most of the time we're thinking of like the motor pattern that lives in our motor neurons, like riding a bike. You never forget how to ride a bike. But that's not like in our muscles itself. It's like this neural net pattern. And the newest research shows that our muscle cells themselves have an epigenetic memory of past exercise, which means it's not that the genes themselves are changed, it's that the genes that are turned on and off with exercise then promote, your cells will remember how to get bigger faster the next time around. And muscle memory, this also translates to, this epigenetic profile of muscle also applies to periods of atrophy, periods of illness like cancer. So one of the researchers, muscle scientists I talked to on muscle, is this leading muscle scientist named Adam Sharples, and he recently did a study in which cancer patients, even 10 years out from survival, tested their muscle cells, saw that they had an epigenetic profile that was more associated with like someone much older, right? So that happens with sickness and illness and treatment, like all of the treatments for something like cancer does so much, as so many of us know, to our bodies and how they function normally. But after a program, an aerobic exercise program of 4 months, these participants were able to reverse the epigenetic profile much closer to a normal, age-adjusted muscular epigenetic profile. So what this means to me is that the capacity for change, right? Muscle remembering how to be healthy, like that's remarkable to me.
It's because we don't think of muscles as being sort of an entity unto themselves.
Yeah, and having so much effect on how both reflecting the overall health of our bodies and also contributing to that health.
Mm-hmm. So I learned so much from your book, but one of the things that I learned that I just love and I still think about is the smallest muscle in the body and what it does.
So smallest and weirdest, I like to say.
Smallest and weirdest, that's a good way to put it.
This actually is one of the most delightful things I learned for the book. So we have muscle fibers that control our goosebumps, and they are called erector pili. Maybe some of you know about these. There are these little muscle fibers around at the base of our hair follicles. And so it's like the ribbon around like a bunch of flowers. And these are the muscles of fear, cold, and awe. And what I love about that is that these muscles, okay, so a porcupine is scared. The spines go up. That's hairs, right? Same thing for us. We feel scared. Also, when we are cold, all of those muscles contract to keep our bodies warmer. But also the sense of awe, the sense that of extreme emotion. Like your muscles are giving you information. Your muscles are communicating with you and telling you something about your state of being. It's existential. I love that because we don't think about muscles in that way. We think about them as this, and we don't think about all these other muscles that are so much contributing to our lives. And like, think about that. Like, actually, it is not a muscle. These erector pili are not voluntary muscles, but sometimes now I can actually, when I talk about them, I feel the zzz up and down my body because I'm so thrilled by that. I'm so awed by what they do, and I think like it tickles me to know that they are talking to me and telling me how I'm doing and how I'm feeling.
And how about the biggest muscle?
Okay, so our butts.
Our butts, there you go.
Our glutes, our gluteus maximus. And I like to think about the gluteal muscle. Probably many of us in this room also know this, right? So no other animal on Earth has such a large gluteal muscle, and it has contributed to this outsized success we've had as a species on this planet, right? Just allowing us to run long distances efficiently without getting injured. The science, many of you probably read this wonderful book by the science writer Heather Radke called Butts, a backstory. But she talks about how a gluteal muscle was very, very helpful on the savannah. It was a must because we had to hunt and outlast these animals that we would hunt down. And sadly, in our current day, we're all sitting on our glutes a lot more than using them to run, but it is just a nice reminder of like this is something that makes us actually uniquely human as a species, evolutionarily on this planet.
Because usually you think of your brain or your sort of your spirit, your
Right.
emotions.
It's actually
as
your
what
butt.
makes you human. It's actually your butt. There you go. There you go. And another part of the body that you talked about, there's a scene in the book, it's wonderful, with Amber Fitzsimmons at UCSF, and I tried not to picture it too much because I was snacking at the time, and she was dissecting a shoulder. So Amber's dissecting a shoulder, you're standing by, you're watching her, and she calls it gorgeous. What was it about the shoulder that she thought was gorgeous?
I was just trying to picture you snacking while witnessing. It's not a good combo.
Not a good
It's
combo.
true.
I probably should have put the food away, right?
Of course, in writing a book about muscle, I thought that it was important to actually see muscle, right? And it's not an easy thing to get to do because whereas human dissection used to be a public thing, right? That the public would go to see in all of these universities around Italy.
Really?
Yeah.
It was like a fun afternoon?
Yeah.
Wow.
People went to, so if you look at Vesalius's, there's a very influential anatomist. Andreas Vesalius is known as like the father of modern anatomy, and he would do dissections. And there's this series of books in which he's the frontispiece is him doing a dissection in this amphitheater, and all of the public is watching because and it's kind of interesting because it's like everyone there wanted to know, like I did, like what happens when you peel back the layers? What can we learn from that? And so the study of anatomy is like, you learn from each of the parts, breaking down into the parts so that you can better understand the whole, how it all works together. And so the shoulder, okay, so for me, confession, swimmer, I think the shoulder is so beautiful, and I like to think about the motions and what, all 17 different muscles work on the scapula, right? So just how do they do? What does it look like? And so to have someone like Amber Fitzsimmons, Amber is the chair of the Department of Rehabilitation, PT and Rehabilitation Science at UCSF. She's also lectures in the Department of Anatomy. And so she was just like, when you meet someone, you're just like, this is the perfect guide to show me. I mean, for me as a journalist, it's just like, I feel like I hit the lottery every time I meet someone who can both has the curiosity and the awe still about the thing that they're doing. And so she's also a swimmer, and she said, let's do the shoulder. And so she was, as she's cutting and peeling back the layers. And of course, I didn't know how I was going to feel when I saw this, but I think to have someone who I trusted like her, she teaches first year anatomy to all of these medical students, physical therapy students, pharmacy students, all these students who, dental students who, this is their first patient. And so she leads them in there with care and grace and respect. And so to have that person doing this for me, and then, saying, like, showing me the fascia and all these muscles, and she's saying, like, the fascia is the envelope that holds the letter that is the muscle, and so this is how they slide over each other. And I will confess, I thought it was really beautiful, the way these muscles were, like, moving over each other. And then I also thought about where I'd seen this before, which is, like, with a chicken breast. When you cut it, it's like this silvery layer on there. And so I was kind of like, I've seen this before. I'm a chicken breast. You know what I mean? Like it was like meat on the table. Like that's who we are. And it was not, I think it was just a recognition of like, we are all this. And again, like the respect and awe of like being able to look and learn from that.
Did it make you think any differently, sort of as you were doing your strokes? Once you were with Amber, did it make you think differently?
That's such a good question. I did, because I kept thinking, okay, sort of outer limits of movement too, and also what happened. These are things we take for granted until something goes wrong. So often, muscle is one of those things. The way the muscles work together, no one thinks about when they put their phone in their pocket. It's just an everyday movement, reaching for something on the high shelf, until they're like, do something where they can't. And so then that just sort of makes you revisit, and I got to, I think, what was so wonderful about this book is I got to learn and appreciate without having to go through that. That was really special.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Another person in your book, Kelly McGonigal, a Stanford University health psychologist, said that the antidepressant molecules released by exercise are a pharmacy in your muscles.
Yes, I love that.
What exactly does that, like, how does that work?
So again, with the endocrine, muscles are not just for mechanical movement, moving your skeleton around, they are an endocrine tissue. And so they release signaling molecules called myokines that travel all around your body to tell, them to do things. And so, including, and especially your brain. And so, again, this chattiness between muscle and brain, and when you move, when you exercise, like this wash of chemicals is going through your body and changing you. And for all those things that we talked about earlier with like immune response, metabolism, tissue healing, just all of these beneficial things are happening. And again, movement feels good because it is good.
So, but does it, I've wondered about that. Why does it feel good to move? Like, what is it? I mean, sometimes if you're taking a walk, you're outside and it's beautiful,
right,
especially at a place like this. But there's something intrinsic to the muscle moving that makes you
releasing these chemicals that travel to your brain that release it's like a virtuous circle, right? And I think that makes sense because we are built to move. We have to move in order to live, right? And, again, this is like on the molecular level, but on the macro level, even something like jumping. So we are built to move as humans. And as social creatures, when we move together, there's something really special about that. It's ecstatic, dancing, jumping together. Again, I write about this in the book, but one of my favorite things to witness in the world of sports is like at the end of the World Series, all these guys who are like mean mugging and spitting in the dugout are just like rah, onto the field, and they're like jumping on top of each other, and it's like this human jack in the box, this collective effervescence, as the psychologist Dacher Keltner calls it. Like, this is what it means to be alive, and like to move together has meaning. And jumping specifically, we're talking about joyful, like, why does it feel good? Why is it fun? Like, there are also some mystery things, like where with jumping, like Charles Darwin wrote a lot about jumping and jumping for joy. And he witnessed and he writes about he wrote about how in the animal kingdom, across all of these species, we are given to various purposeless movements, like jumping, like these expansive movements, kids jumping for joy, dogs bounding with their owners, horses frisking, and I'll add to that whales breaching. Like, it's like you see that, and the movement is the message. You see that as joy. You understand that. It's not a language that's verbal, it's physical. And so any dancer knows that, like, the movement is the thing that we are communicating with. So we're talking, but you're communicating with your nods, our eye contact, like how our postures are leaning towards each other. And I find that story of muscle so profound.
It is interesting when you get a piece of good news, when you're happy about something, your instinct is to jump or to move or to leap or to go run towards someone or whatever. Right. And your instinct isn't just to be still.
Yeah, and we are driven. Something in us is, intrinsically driven to celebrate that way.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that your father would, encourage you and your brother to move around and to lift weights and to all of that. Did he treat the two of you differently, a boy versus a girl?
No. My brother and I are a year, a week, and 1 day apart.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes when I was little, I thought we were twins. He still makes fun of me for thinking that. But so my father treated us with the same, with our training regimens. Like, we would be like doing our forward kick, side kick, roundhouse kick, running, swimming, sparring, all this stuff together in the same way. And I do think that was revolutionary for me in retrospect. For sure.
I mean, it sounds like your father was really ahead of his time in many ways. He did not treat a boy and a girl differently. Yeah. Because you write in your book about how the worldview that muscularity and physical strength for women is, this is a quote from your book, a threat to societal order, domestic harmony, and reproductive responsibility. In other words, that a woman who is physically strong is a threat to societal order, domestic harmony, and reproductive responsibility. Yeah. So first, can you describe that to me? What do you mean that strong women are those things?
I mean, historically, across human history and society, especially in the order of society, right? So it's organized oftentimes in binary gender roles, and so you've got one thing, strength, physical strength, power being associated with men, and then you've got domestic sphere, you've got like a more submissive role. Femininity is like equated with weakness, and it's funny because strength is not zero sum. Like, if I'm strong, you can be strong too. And yet in society, physical strength and power can be seen and felt as zero sum because like someone is taking power away from the other. There's like, this is, I think about this, I thought about this a lot for the book in trying to kind of tease out these threads in politics. I mean, the reason that, when women were fighting for suffrage, there was one of the strategies was physical health, exercise, because the theory is like, to have a free body, we had to have a free body to be free women, right, to get the vote. And also when you're looking at when like Hillary Clinton was running for president, it was like all of these like pseudoscience theories of menopause, maybe making women unstable leaders, And yet testosterone is the hormone that is more likely to make people act recklessly. And so it's just this very funny, like, mushing up of, you know, scientific claims, pseudoscience, to kind of justify taking power away from one group or another. And then, you know, this is something that is like over time forever. Even in ancient Greece, like the philosophers, I think Sophocles said this. He said, like, women couldn't be trusted to participate in civil society because of their uteruses, and they could be hysterical. Mm-hmm. You know, like the unstable, you know, and also this is associated with weightlifting as well. Like, women were told not to lift weights because people were told that their uteruses might fall out. I mean, this is all crazy stuff. Like, this is all, but it's all mushed up together in, like, issues of power in society and gender roles, and what's suitable, what is correct. And, you know, thankfully all of that is changing and in flux and kind of moving generally in the right direction. But, you know, you've got a lot of regressive currents in the world right now, so to speak. So there's a lot of pushback too.
And your father was a little like Michelangelo, in that Michelangelo, he painted women as being as robust as men.
Yes, yeah.
What do we know about sort of why he did that? Or
well, part of it was practical because pretty much all of the models in the salons at that time were men, right? There was not a lot of situations in which, like, a woman could be, like, reputably posing for all these male artists. But even so, he was, you know, on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. This was something that my dad actually schooled me in when I was 12. Like, there was the completed restoration of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and we would look at the books and magazines that were about this, and you would see, he would say, like, look at these muscles, the Sibyls, and they just were the prophets, they were beautiful and strong and, like, without regard for gender. And they were, like, glowing with life. I mean, that was beautiful to me. Like, that was something that I saw when I was 12 years old, in the height of puberty. Like, this is a time also when we're told to, like, get smaller, hide our femininity in sports, especially when you're 12. That's when all the girls drop out. Mm-hmm. And there are various reasons for this, but a lot of it is, like, girls are told from a young age, like, there's something shameful about the female body and strength, and like, you're kind of seen as more sexual than, like, an athlete of power. And boys from a young age are, you know, there's no when they hit puberty, they're just, like, off to the races, you know. And so it's different messages. It's all really complicated, but this, like, for me at least, like, I was inoculated against that because of my dad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And another wonderful character in your book is a woman named Jan Todd, who certainly defies that gender stereotype. Yeah. What was it like to tell us about her and what it was like to spend time with her?
Jan Todd is one of my favorite people and characters in the book. She is a pioneer power lifter and sports historian at UT Austin. And when in the 70s, she was the first woman to lift these Scottish stones of strength known as the Dinnie stones, which weigh 733 pounds. So that's like a fully grown male grizzly bear. I was trying to think about, like, what could I tell people that is like it's something that's relative to you. And she would also remain the only woman to do that for, like, 30 years. Like, it's so crazy because, like, no one else tried to do it. But she was also a woman who came to be, like, Sports Illustrated profiled her as, like, the world's strongest woman. She was on, like, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I encourage actually all of you to look this up. Jan Todd, Johnny Carson, and lifting a 400-pound barbell, because it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen, where she has recently, like, broken all these world records, and Johnny was pretty fit back in the day. You know, he ran and was, like, just an athlete, and he said, I'm not going to pick this up, I'm just going to try. And he could not even budget, and he just started laughing hysterically because it was so absurd that, you know, when you're confronted with something that is, like, so impossible, he couldn't even, and then, like, two other guys off the couch, it took the three of them to lift it, and she lifted it in one go by herself. But it was just so wonderful. It's one of those things where, like, physical strength actually still counts for something. Like we are awed by physical feats of strength even now in this very virtual world. But anyway, she broke, like this was before Title IX, before, just like, she was actually probably the reason in many ways that we lift weights today, like that Title IX came for about. She worked really hard on those issues, women's sports over the last 50 years, and she still runs like the Arnold Strongman and Strongwoman contest like every year in Columbus. And really, the only reason that there's an Arnold Strongwoman contest is her.
It's her. Wow.
Yeah.
And, your big idea is that our muscles are smarter than we think, but sort of conventionally in our society, that's not how it plays out. It's
Right.
the dumb jock. It's, if you think back to Archie comic books, Moose was the big strong guy, and he was also dumb. Like, he
Yeah.
couldn't be big and strong and smart.
Right.
He had to be big and strong and dumb.
Yes.
Why do we separate those two things out? That if you're big and strong, you must not be smart. And the dweeb, the smart guy, is usually sort of like the little scrawny, right.
weakling thing. I do think it's really funny, and I think that part of it probably is that muscles are worn on the body in a way that is really, it's tangible, it's visible, right? This is the demonstration of strength, and intelligence is something that is not that. It is, we've sort of prized that as something that can be invisible, and it shows itself in other ways. But it actually was not always that way. I mean, the ancients thought of sound and strong mind and body together, right? This is like something that was seen, like a healthy individual was both physically strong and intellectually strong. And the physician and philosopher Galen, I mean, he was the first, he wrote about muscles in a way that influenced, I think now, like this branch of thinking of like physical vigor and muscularity as like an ideal, like as a mark of character, right? Mm-hmm. Strength of body, strength of mind, strength of character. And I think that that's something that carries through to today. Like we do have like a little bit of a like schizophrenia about it, where what you're describing, this like brain versus brawn thing and Archie comics and all that, dumb jocks, and yet we revere our athletes.
That's true.
We elevate them, and then we tell them that to stay in their lane when they talk about things that are important to them. So there is it's still funny, but I think more and more we understand that having a strong body is not the antithesis of like
right. It's that the two things
they go together, and they should,
and they should. So there was one point in your book that was kind of a bummer, which is when you said that your muscles start to atrophy. Am I using the right word? At age 30, or you start to lose muscle mass. You
start to lose age-related loss of muscle
at age 30.
30s. Sorry,
30s. That is early, way earlier than I thought.
Yeah.
So what does that actually mean, and what can you do about it?
So I think people know about osteopenia, osteoporosis a lot more than they know about sarcopenia, right? The age-related loss of muscle. Again, super normal, happens to all of us, even athletes, no matter how fit you are. And I think the message is starting to get out more so how important it is to start strength training at every stage of life, so as to be able to extend your wellness lifespan to those later years. And the amazing thing is, like, no matter how late you start with strengthening your muscles, huge changes occur, not just in physical strength, but again, like influencing all your body systems. There are all these stories of patients who like start strength training and really like are able to then take control of their health in different ways, like going off certain meds, like because so many positive changes have happened because of that strength training. It's really remarkable. I think that is like the hopeful, best, awesome thing to take away, which is that it's not, everyone can start now, muscles are for you, strength is for you, and it's not just for a certain kind of body and a certain kind of person that we have seen like associated with strength.
And you specifically talk about women as they get older.
Yes.
And let's talk about that and why that's important.
Well, I think that, so with menopause, there are certain changes that happen with hormones that make women more susceptible to muscle loss, but also I think that's like a messaging thing, like fitness, physical strength training is not something that women have historically done, and to the extent that men have been, or that it's been okay and encouraged for men to do that. So even over the last several years, I think that the biggest change that's happened is like in the gym, at like at lunchtime in my neighborhood gym, it's like I'll see just as many women deadlifting, powerlifting as men. I'll see these like 20-year-old girls with their like giant headphones on, and they're just like, doing all the, I mean, it's really amazing. And I think like generationally that's changed. And it's not just like a fitness trend, it's a health trend. So I think that those two things dovetailing, again, like that the messaging from your physician when you go for your physical is that you should be doing some strength. My mom is getting this, like she's 78 years old. And so, and she has had some health issues over the last several years, but like, I just remember sitting in the hospital room and the doctor saying, you need more muscle. And muscle as a resource to draw on for overall health. And when you are injured or ill, that it is a resource energy-wise and also strength-wise and recovery-wise to draw on when you're recovering.
And you're a swimmer. Did you have a sort of a strength training regimen before you started working on this book?
I did off and on over the years. I rode crew in college, where they tell you to spend basically all of your waking hours in the weight room. And over the years, I've kind of I've gone through many different journeys with strength, as many of us have. I've always, the thing that's always been consistent is swimming, but I also knew weight bearing, I've got to do it. And I enjoyed the classes. I enjoyed all of those. I enjoyed yoga, I enjoyed Pilates, I enjoyed different kinds of strength training, resistance training, body weight training, and lifting weights was something that I did always do. But I gotta tell you, researching this book, I really went in and drank all the Kool-Aid, because I know now how important it is to be doing that strength training for all of us. So I work with a trainer, and it's actually, I find it really fun because my husband and I do it together. And my husband's super competitive and I'm not, but I enjoy the time we spend together, because and again, a lot of people are very intimidated by the gym, the weight room, and it's getting people in there. So many gyms have the free session with the trainer. Talk to this person about your goals, what you're wanting to do, getting the knowledge so that you can feel safe and supported, and also doing it with friends makes you socially obligated to do it, and then you're showing up for those people, and then you realize oh, I like feeling capable. I like feeling that day to day the tangible gains are with me, and that's a psychological gain too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book about swimming.
Yes.
And you wrote a book called American Chinatown,
Yes.
about Chinatowns in the United States. What made you wake up one morning and say, I can write about muscles?
Well, I think it's always curiosity, right? And I contain multitudes, as do all of you. And I actually did really want to write a book that was in conversation with Why We Swim, continuing this conversation of the body and movement and humans moving through the world. I find, and as a writer, I've always really wanted to go at it with a multidisciplinary approach. So in this book, there is science, but there's also history and culture and literature, and these characters and narrative nonfiction just kind of coming together in ways to make you understand in a whole way. Again, kind of like the study of anatomy. How do all these parts work together to make me understand that muscle is for me and all of us, and is so important to our overall health and longevity?
Do you think part of it was what your father taught you over the years?
Oh, 100%.
And being a swimmer?
Yeah. And wanting really to I started writing this book in COVID. It was 2021. My father lives in China. First place to shut down, one of the last places to open up. I did not know when I was going to see him again. And so actually, I would say part of writing this book was a love letter to him, and also having something to talk about, having something that we could, just connect on. Yeah.
Is there ever a point at which, if you've sort of lived a couch potato life, when it's just too late?
No.
No? Okay.
It's not.
Okay.
Big no.
That
Big
your muscles will pick up on whatever you...
And really, your muscles have been ready that whole time. And obviously, you'd have to start slower, but I think even not having done it your whole life, I mean, there are quite a few studies of people who have never had an exercise program in their lives, even in their 70s. Crazy, amazing things happen to their bodies and health in a beneficial way. obviously they have to do it with guidance, but I find that, again, like we are all capable of change, and muscle helps us to do that.
That is a great note to start. We are all capable of change, and our muscles help do that. So we're going to take our last 15 minutes and take questions from the audience. So raise your hand. I'll call on you, and don't say a word until you get a microphone, because we will not understand a word that you say. So this lady with a blue hat over here, and we'll start with her.
Hi, thank you. My question is, I in the gym a lot now and in workout classes, women are hearing, go heavier, we need that strength. But then there's also bar classes where you're doing small weights, and that feels really good too. So I'm curious what your perspective is on balancing heavy weights and the impact that also light weights have for women specifically.
That's a really great question, thank you. I think a lot of people are curious about that. So there are various studies that show like lighter weights, many repetitions can have the same gains as like heavier weights, lower number of repetitions. I say go for all of it that you enjoy. And also build in some element of where you are getting challenged, right? Because muscles are always, they respond and grow and get stronger with challenge and stress. That's not to say that you have to go and tear up your muscles. I mean, this is like that's not what I'm saying at all. It has to feel hard sometimes, which is life. And also it should be fun sometimes as well. And so I think the balance of those things that's where I'm at.
So strength training is a metaphor for life.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Sometimes
That's
it sucks
good.
and sometimes
All right,
it's
so
great.
right there.
Yeah, quick question. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She's,
Oh, Gabrielle Lane. Yeah, sorry.
Lyon.
Yes.
Yeah, and she really pretty much says everything that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But one thing you didn't talk about is just the protein intake that you
Yes.
need to support your muscles.
Yes. Well, so I'm not a dietitian, but I know the conversation right now is very much like driven around protein. Are we getting enough protein? Like, and that goes hand in hand with this, like I think I want to move away from like the fad part, which is like there's always going to be fads that come and go, and people in general do eat enough protein to support their lives and muscle and activity. And I always will say to people, because I'm not a nutritionist, like talk to your doctor. Like your doctor is the one who knows you know what you're eating. I don't know what you're eating. So if you're not getting enough to support whatever your goals are, you could be a performance athlete. So maybe you do need to up your intake. But you could also be someone who is more of a recreational, activity, and you don't need that much. And the thing is, like, you can eat all the protein you want, but it doesn't stick around. Like, it's not like you can like put it away and save it for later. Like, you can only process so much of it at a time. So I think that there has been a lot of conversation around like, oh my gosh, am I getting enough protein? And I want it to feel like you probably are. And if you have questions about it, talk to your doctor. Like, that's like the wisest, like most like not panicky way I can answer people who ask me about this, because I do think it's really important, because protein is very much important to your nutrition and your health and sort of what is supporting like your needs, like nutritionally, but so is everything else.
Let's see, in the back, we have a question over there. Do you see where the back?
Bonnie, thank you for a great presentation and
Thank
wonderful
you.
book. Following up on the protein question, what's your thought about supplements? Because there's a tremendous amount in the market that are being put out there in terms
Right.
of helping to support
Yeah,
muscle
for sure. I will say that I do use creatine now. Like all of the research that I've done for the book, like the research is good and it's safe to use, and like there's been a lot of like robust data and study on it, and I think that seems reasonable to me. But again, like all the other stuff, there's so much other stuff, and it's being peddled to you every day. So that's something that I also would say, like, talk to your doctor, talk to someone who like knows what kind of diet, because you could be eating something that is completely different from your friend, and so like if you're taking these, it doesn't mean that it's going to affect you in the same way. And also, what is your health profile? Like, I think that this is something that actually people should take seriously and talk to their doctors about.
Alrighty, we have a question right back there in the corner under the picture.
Hi, my name's Karen. I am a doctor. And I wonder if some of my fellow docs might back me up and say that our medical training doesn't teach us very much about strength, about nutrition, about supplements. What would you tell those who work in medical education and who are training the doctors of the future how to support their patients?
Read my book. Just kidding.
It's a great answer.
No, that is the information out there, especially on the internet, is growing exponentially every day to tell you anything that you want to know in the way that you think you should know it. And so it is really difficult. I mean, this is a question that goes beyond medicine, right? It's like any kind of information that you can fall into a wormhole, an AI tangent, rabbit hole that takes you somewhere where you never thought you would end up. I'm afraid I don't have an answer for that, but I think, like, as much as I have always conducted my life as a journalist, read widely, talk to experts who are trusted, and like approach it all with a healthy dose of skepticism and also like common sense.
It is interesting. Why do you think that medical education contains so little about strength training, strength and muscles and?
I don't know. I mean, because I have been on this very particular investigative path and exploration in the last several years. That's not my sense because of the people I've been talking to, the medical school, and the medical professionals and the scientists I've talked to. But that's not to say that, like, in like normal med school education. Well, it's also like that, but that holds true for so much of women's health, right? So I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that.
Okay, great. We have a question right up front here.
You mentioned that age 12, the girls go away.
Yeah.
Is there more you could say about that, if there is something to say?
I think that puberty, no. I know that puberty, having a 12 and a 14-year-old, is a radical time of change for kids. And even if they, and being the mom of swim team kids, and I grew up in a swim team, and that was like my safe space, happy place, collegial place, friend place, my community. And sometimes that doesn't always dovetail in the perfect way, and people don't feel comfortable in swimsuits anymore. People don't want to, girls especially, like, they don't want to get too big. And, this is, again, messaging. My shoulders are too big. I don't want that. I see beauty ideals on Instagram fed to me in a certain way, and it doesn't match with what I am seeing in the mirror. And so this is like, a lot of kids drop out in sports because of this at that time, specifically in swimming, I know, probably across other sports as well. Like, you're starting to get your period. You're trying to, like, I have all these stories I could tell you off mic of, like, what that is like to be, a young woman kind of coming through sports. But it is challenging. And so I think, like, the messaging is really important to have the role models. I mean, like, Alona Marr is, like, she's my hero. She has single-handedly done so much to change women's sports. She's the U.S. women's rugby player who, like, took the world by storm in the Olympics, and is just, like, continuing to shift. And also, she's a role model for young girls, like, to your question, where, she said, I wish I had a me when I was 12, because she didn't. She was, like, a big, strong girl. She did not look like, these particular beauty ideals of girls, athletes. And, she's now a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. And that's something that, like, beauty, femininity can look like this. And she owns it. And she's, like, very confident. And even when she's also very honest about, like, what it feels like sometimes to have negative messages sent to her. And so I think, like, to have someone really, like, she's a gift to the world, and I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about men who can see that this woman is a model of womanhood. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Let's see, I see a question right there. Yes, you. She's looking around.
Hi, I'm Hallie Young. I'm based in LA. I'm in public health, but also a personal trainer. And I have a comment and a question. I hope that's okay. But just to the doctor question.
Yes.
I wanted to add that as a personal trainer, we're always told to build your team, that you have a scope of work and that other people have scope of works that are complementary to yours. And so I would just say that, like, you don't need to know everything, and you can build a team of referrals that you know and that you trust in your community to refer out when there is something that you're not sure about. Meet nutritionists, personal trainers, things like that. And then my question is, as a personal trainer, I feel like I often see the extremes of individuals wanting to get active. Either people who are like, I have no motivation, no time, no nothing,
Right.
I hate exercising. And people on the other end that have obsessive behaviors that are obviously, fed by cultural narratives and things like that, around exercise, around diet, around nutrition. And I'm curious, who and what messages or what messengers are you seeing to be most effective to find that happy medium of encouraging people to work out, but not to the extreme of things like eating disorders?
Thank you for both the answer and the question. I just want to comment on, in support of that, like, the trainer I work with also has a physical therapist in his studio, and like the way that it's such a wonderful two-way street of like information and also like supporting each other's work and supporting the people who attend that gym. Like, I think that's a really, so thank you for sharing that. In terms of messaging, I mean, it's hard. I think there's so many messages that are being out there that are quite toxic, right? Like, and again, you can really find anything on social media. And where my Instagram is so funny because it's like books and women's sports and surfing, and this is like sort of the things that these are my happy places in terms of like fitness and like community, right? And I think finding like a community that supports you, but also like I think that the finding certain influence, I think that influencers can be very helpful. And it's like, pointing to some of these sessions that were here this week, influencers who have accurate medical advice, accurate fitness advice, stuff that is not so extreme. And I think for you as a trainer to find the ones that you think are in alignment with the work that you're doing with your clients is like, I mean, it takes a lot of work, right? Because you have to, but there are out there. There are more Alona Mars out there, and I think that's really, it's going to take work. Yeah.
So there's holding up the people who are doing it right.
Yes.
As
yeah,
examples,
for
who are
sure.
not obsessive, not in eating disorders.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Go ahead. Actually, get a microphone first.
We talk a lot about resistance training, especially as we get older and everything. How about, and obviously injury prevention, how about stretching and or flexibility?
Mobility
those kind of
work.
things to mobility work,
Yeah.
Which is
No, that's all so important. And I think any time you're doing strength training to build in that mobility work and the stretching, I think any good trainer will be doing that with you. So that's absolutely, yeah.
Let's see. Was there another hand over here? I'm making you work. Sorry, but you're getting your muscles. Yeah.
Hi, yeah. Kind of building off the extremes, especially in women's health.
Yes.
Now we're seeing trends of like functional amenorrhea, which is basically losing one's period from overexercise. And I was wondering if you found any kind of solutions to this problem in your research or had anything to say like on that topic.
Yes.
Specifically with women.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has to do with nutrition and also not pushing your body to such extremes that you would lose your menstruation. I mean, I think this has been a real issue with running in the women's running community, and there have been a lot of stories about that with the athletes like training under Alberto Salazar in Oregon, like the female athletes who were like basically told to train like men and then basically broke their bodies. I mean, I think there's a lot more awareness around that, a lot more happily, women's science, meaning women's health, women's sports science, specifically to support women's athletes around their particular health profiles. And I think that's really important. Like, that's something that has really changed, where there's more investment being put into, like the various sports owners, Michelle Kang, like investing in women's soccer, but also investing in women's sports science and research, to kind of like innovation labs, to kind of say, we need to know more about how to support women's athletes and their health further and for longevity. And it's a complicated question. Yeah, for sure.
Little bug getting exercise around us. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, and it's too bad, because I know there were so many other questions in the audience. But thank you. This was just amazing. This is really terrific.